Puss in Boots: The Last Wish has no business being this good. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, this is a sequel to a spin-off from the Shrek franchise, released over a decade after the first Puss in Boots movie, centered on a character who originally worked best as a comic relief. On paper, this could have easily been a lazy franchise extension. A Remember That movie. A Please Still Care About Shrek movie. We still own the IP, let's get it back on the schedule movie. But instead, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish became one of the most visually exciting, emotionally mature, and surprisingly intense animated films DreamWorks has made in years. And this is what fascinates me about it. Because this movie didn't just revive Puss in Boots, it changes the franchise he came from. It asks the question, what happens when the funny, fearless, arrogant adventure hero suddenly realizes he is not immortal? And more importantly, what happens when a studio modernizes a franchise without completely betraying what people liked about it in the first place? So today on the Cartoon Palooza, we'll be reviewing Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a movie about death, fear, found family, fairy tales, spaghetti westerns, and one very stressed out orange cat that doesn't go by Garfield. Although saying Garfield's kind of stressed out defeats the purpose, so I don't know why I came up with that joke. Welcome back to the Cartoon Palooza, where we talk animation news, animation movie reviews, as well as the occasional update and thoughts on anything dealing with industry animation. Granted, if there was one character in the Shrek universe that deserved a spin-off lead, it had to be Puss in Boots. Because in the main Shrek movies, Puss is hilarious, charming, dramatic, and instantly memorable. But he's also the kind of character who can become distracting if you use him too much. I felt that was evident when you're watching Shrek the Third, although there's probably a lot of problems with that movie that we'll probably cover on a different time. But granted, Shrek and Donkey have always been one of the best comedy dynamics in modern animation. The whole relationship is built on Shrek being grumpy, defensive, and closed off, while Donkey is loud, needy, loyal, and emotionally open. So when Puss shows up, he adds a great third flavor, but he also changes the balance. That's why giving him his own lane kind of makes sense. Puss has enough charisma to carry his own story, but he also needs a movie that did more than just say, hey, remember the cute eyes? And that's where The Last Wish gets really smart. The movie understands that Puss is funny because he takes himself so seriously. He's a legend in his own mind. He loves the myths. He loves the songs, big applause. He just loves being Puss in Boots. But the movie asks a brutal question. What if the legend starts running out of time? And this is where the movie goes from fun Shrek spin-off to, wait, are we really doing death anxiety in a family film? The story is pretty straightforward. Puss discovers that he's burned through 8 of his 9 lives, mostly because he's been reckless, arrogant, and addicted to danger. He is down to his final life. So when he hears about a magical wishing star that he can grant one wish, he goes after it in hope of getting his lives back. Along the way, he runs into Kitty Softpaws from the first Puss in Boots movie, Barito, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Big Jack Juana, and one of the most intimidating animated villains DreamWorks has ever put on screen, and I'll be real with you, that is a high bar to set. And that's what makes the premise works. It's very simple. Puss just wants more lives. But what he actually needs is to value the life he has. Very straightforward. But it gives the movie an emotional spine. A lot of modern animated movies get so busy trying to build lore, set up franchises, and stack plot mechanics that the emotional point gets buried. The Last Wish doesn't do that. Alright, so you got a couple moments where you got Pinocchio having a cameo and you briefly see Shrek, but it doesn't overwhelm the movie. It has a fairy tale quest structure, but the real journey is internal. Puss is not just trying to get to the star, he's trying to avoid facing the fact that he's scared. A scaredy cat, if you will. And that is a great character problem for him, because this is a character whose whole personality is built around not being scared of anything. Antonio Banderas is excellent in this film. He gives Puss all the comedy, charm, confidence, and melodrama you would expect. But this time, there's a new layer underneath it. Fear. And not just goofy fear, straight up fear. Puss has always been theatrical. He's always acted like the hero of his own legend. But in this movie, the legend starts to crack. When he realizes that he's only got one life left, he doesn't just become cautious. He panics and he goes straight into a nursing home. I mean, kind of dramatic, but that kind of illustrates the point. You hear the pride, the denial, the embarrassment, and the vulnerability. This is what separates the movie not from just being another adventure comedy. Puss is still funny, but the movie's not afraid of making emotionally exposed. And Kitty Softpaws really works against him because she sees through the act. She knows Puss. She knows his ego, knows the charm. She knows when he's being performative. And Parito, voiced by Harvey Guillen, is a total kind of contrast. Parito is not cool. He is not legendary. He is not dangerous. He has no big dramatic myth around him. He's just kind. And that's what matters. Because Puss in Boots being obsessed with having 9 lives, while Parito is just grateful to have 1, the contrast is the heart of the story. But as good as these characters are, the first thing most people notice about the movie is the animation. And I'm telling you, DreamWorks cooked here. The animation in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is one of the biggest reasons this movie feels like such a step forward. DreamWorks made a major stylistic shift here. Instead of making those Shrek movies look like smoother and more polished traditional CG, they lean into a painterly, storybook illustrated style. And during the action scenes, the animation sometimes drops into a lower frame rate, more pose-driven style that makes each movement feel sharper and more graphic. You can feel the Spider-Verse influence in the broader industry here. After Spider-Verse, a lot of studios seemed to realize that CG animation didn't have to chase for realism, it could be stylized. Feel illustrated. It could embrace texture, frame rate, changes, comic book energy, painterly backgrounds, and exaggerated motion. But here's the important point. The Last Wish doesn't feel like a copy. It uses that stylized approach in a way that fits Puss in Boots. This is a fairy tale world, a storybook world, a world of legends, witches, giants, and monsters. So the painterly look makes sense. It feels like someone's taking a fairy tale illustration and giving it a shot of espresso. The action scenes are especially good because the lower frame rate moments let you actually read the poses. You feel the impact of the sword fight. You see who is hitting who. You appreciate the composition. You can feel the speed without the movements feeling so fluid. And then when you want the movements to be a little slower, in character-driven moments where you see a lot of acting, they do slow down the frame rate to something more traditional that we've seen in the other Shrek movies. This is also why I think the movie is important for the future of the Shrek franchise. Because with more Shrek on the horizon, people are naturally wondering, what should Shrek universe even look like now? The original Shrek movies had a very specific early 2000s CG look. It was part of the identity. Puss still feels like Puss. The fairy tale comedy is still there. The Shrek DNA is still there, and the irrelevance is still there. But the movie updates the visual language around him. It doesn't feel like the studio's embarrassed by the franchise. It just feels like they're giving it a new coat of paint. And that's the balance the legacy franchise needs. You can't just freeze everything in time. But you also can't overcorrect it so hard that fans feel like they're watching a different property wearing the old names in a costume. The Last Wish walks that line really well. And the reason the style works so well is because every major obstacle in the movie feels like it's coming from a different emotional want. This makes the quest feel more interesting than a simple race for the treasure. Every obstacle reveals something about the characters. There's a little detail in the film where the environment changes on who's holding the map, which is a fun idea. It makes the world feel magical, but also turns the landscape into a psychology. The world literally reshapes itself around desire. There was a live-action movie called Annihilation that came out years back, where the environment is not just a setting, but a force that distorts and reflects what's happening inside of the characters. Obviously, that's a very different kind of movie. You know, fewer nightmare bears made of human screams and more fairy tale cats with swords. But the idea is similar. World's not neutral, it's responding. Story-wise, I love how much this movie pulls from spaghetti westerns. You can feel the good, the bad, the ugly in the standoffs, the framing, the music cues, the eyes, the close-ups, and the idea of morality, different characters chasing the same prize. Parito is basically the dog with no name, wandering through the movie with impossible innocence. The Western influence gives the movie more flavor than a standard fantasy quest. It's not just go get the magical object. It's a fairy tale treasure hunt staged like a Western showdown. And that's part of what makes this movie more cinematic than people expected. I mean, we gotta talk about death, because this wolf is terrifying. And what makes him work is that he's not just a villain, he's a concept. He's not taking over a kingdom, he's not trying to steal a wish, he's not trying to become rich, not trying to rule the world. He just is. And he's angry because Puss wasted his 8 lives and treated morality like a joke. And that's a strong idea, because that's not wrong. That's what makes him scary. He's not just evil for the sake of being evil, he's got a point. Puss has been careless. Puss has taken his lives for granted. Puss has built a legend out of not valuing the thing death represents. So when death shows up, the movie changes. Colors shift. The whistle starts. Puss freezes. The comedy drops. It gets intense, but not in the way it feels vulgar or alienating for families. It finds that perfect fairy tale danger level, scary enough to matter, not so graphic that it breaks the movie, and that's hard to pull off. And then on a completely opposite side of the villain spectrum, we get Jack Horner, who is just delightfully awful. While Death might be one of my favorite villains, Jack Horner might be one of my favorite parts of the movie because he's such a refreshing villain. A lot of modern animated villains want them to be misunderstood, tragic, secretly wounded, or emotionally complicated. And trust me, that can work. You just need a jerk. And Jack Horner is the perfect jerk. No tragic backstory, no secret pain, maybe he's got a point, no emotional ambiguity. He's greedy, selfish, cruel, and totally cool with it. And John Mulaney plays that perfectly. He makes Jack funny without making him likable, and that's an important distinction. Jack is not the emotional center of the movie. He's not supposed to make us cry. He's there to represent pure selfish desire. Everyone else wants something that reveals a wound. Jack just wants everything. And honestly, in a movie with a lot of emotional complexity, having one villain who's just a giant magical weapons hoarder is kind of refreshing. Sometimes the meatball doesn't need a tragic origin story. Sometimes the meatball's just bad. Then you got Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Ironically, they don't have the continuity of the first Shrek movie where the mother bear gets killed, but we won't go into that. At first, they seem like the B-story bandits, a fun obstacle, a fairy tale crime family. They're basically there to chase the wish and cause chaos. But the emotional story is actually simple and sweet. Goldilocks thinks she wants a real family, but the whole time it's right in front of her. And yeah, that's a very familiar story beat. I mean, I could count on 2 fingers, 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands, how many times that's been done in animation. But it works here because the movie's built around characters misunderstanding what they actually need. Puss thinks he needs more lives. Goldie thinks she needs a different family. Kitty thinks that she needs to never trust anyone ever. The wish reveals everyone's wound. That's why multiple character threads do not feel random. They orbit around the same idea. Stop chasing what you think will fix your life long enough to see what you already have. So why does Puss in Boots: The Last Wish work so well? It comes down to 3 things. Number 1, it takes the character seriously without losing the comedy. Puss is still funny, still dramatic, still got an ego, and he's still got his charm. But it gives him a real fear. Second, it updates the animation style without abandoning the franchise. The movie looks modern, but it doesn't feel like it hates where it comes from. And number three, it has a simple theme that every part of the story supports. Value the life you have, and that's it. That's the movie. And because the theme is so clear, all the characters can bounce off of it in different ways. Overall, The Puss in Boots: Last Wish is one of those movies that takes the familiar story beats and elevates them through great execution. Is the treasure hunt structure new? Not really. Is the found family that was right in front of your face new? No. Is the hero learning to appreciate new life? Definitely not. But the animation is not just about having the newest idea, it's about how you execute the idea. And the movie executes it brilliantly. The style's fresh, the action's readable, the characters are funny, the villains are memorable, the emotional stakes are real, and the movie actually gives Puss in Boots a reason to exist beyond the funny cat from Shrek. And that's a huge win. Granted, I haven't seen the original Puss in Boots movie yet, but I can say pretty confidently that this one feels like a major evolution to the Shrek franchise. It's not just a good spin-off sequel, it's one of the DreamWorks' strongest modern films. And if this is the visual and emotional direction the Shrek universe is heading then honestly, count me in. Because The Last Wish proves you can modernize a legacy franchise while stripping it away its personality. Just gotta respect the character, take a real artistic swing, and maybe let a terrifying wolf whistle at your main character until he learns something. But what do you think? Is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish one of DreamWorks' best movies? Or do you think it's overhyped? And where do you want the Shrek series to go? Let me know in the comments. If you like animation reviews, you want to know more about animation news, feel free to subscribe and hit that like button. I'm Joey Tedesco, and thanks for watching this review of the Cartoon Palooza.